Hey folks, today I'm gonna walk you through my full process which I'm using for writing my first book with O'Reilly, which is Learning AI Native Software Engineering, which is gonna be out in February 2027. It's the first time for me, I'm a first time author, so I'm learning while I'm doing it. But since day one, I've decided to approach this new artifact which I'm building, this book, as a software project. And given that in the book I showcase a lot of techniques to interact with AI and to make your repository AI friendly and a lot of the stuff, I've decided to apply the same ideas to the book. Now, the reason for this video is that last week I've done a very quick post to LinkedIn. It went very well. So today I'm gonna just walk you through the entire process, the workflow. We're gonna take a look very briefly at the repository, at how I'm managing the repo. As you can see, everything lives into one single repository. Everything, including marketing, assets, everything eventually will be in this repo, because I found out that the investment that I'm doing into the context pays a lot of dividends. And this is true both for code bases, which are for your software engineering projects, and this is valid for code bases which are on different things, like a book as well. Quick note: this video is not scripted. It's just me talking and discussing what is my workflow. So it's gonna be a little bit long, but bear with me. I hope it's gonna be interesting. So, just a couple of words about the book AI Native Software Engineering. As I was mentioning, it's gonna be a book around how we can leverage AI into the software development lifecycle. If you're interested about it, I strongly recommend to go at alfonsograziano.it/book. You can take a look. I strongly recommend just reading through it. There is a free learning guide. So in case you're interested, you can just go through this roadmap, which is 100% free. You can take a look. There is theory, practice, a lot of useful links that me and my colleagues use to learn a little bit more about this word. But without further ado, let's get started. Let's start from the beginning. So usually, when I have to write a new chapter or when I have to edit a chapter, I start from the chapter main topic, which might be spec-driven development, it might be verification gates, it might be how to use AI engineering in a team, whatever. The input for all this information is my experience. I've been working with AI engineering for years now. I've been leading a team working on agents, building agents, doing a lot of crazy stuff. So I do have a little bit of experience on the field. Otherwise, I wouldn't be writing a book on the topic. Then, of course, apart from myself, I'm including a lot of conversation that I'm having with people, third-party articles, which I love. I'm also including, in my thoughts on some of the content that I post already on my blog post, LinkedIn podcasts. So everything just becomes markdown. It's important into the system, and then it becomes one of the inputs to write a chapter. Then what I do is I do a lot of brainstorming. So I basically use the agent as a rubber duck, and here there are a lot of techniques that you can use. You can use self-reflection techniques, the 5 whys. There are a bunch of them. One pointer that I would like to give you is, if you go on the BIMAD method, there is a full section about brainstorming techniques, which I found very useful. So this is one of the things. Eventually, what comes out of this process is a set of notes. So those notes are both handwritten, written by the agent. Everything, of course, is fully fully humanly reviewed. Ideally, I don't want to put any slop into this book. So everything is fully humanly reviewed, not just by one human, but multiple humans, as we will see in a minute. So once I do have my notes and I'm happy with the structure of the chapter and the ideas that I want to put on the chapter, then I start to do a lot of research. So I more or less know at this point, at this stage, what I want to discuss. Then I do research. So I basically download a lot of resources. I study them if I didn't study them already, and I generate eventually a research.md file. Now, as we will see, I don't have those files here because I recently migrated into a new repo, and so I just did a little bit of cleanup. But in an old repo, I do have all these notes, research. Once I do have all this stuff, then I build the first outline, which is basically okay. What is, I don't know, chapter one? What is chapter one? What are the items that I want to discuss in chapter one, and so on and so forth, right? Once I do have this, once I do have my outline, then I start writing section by section. So the first thing that I do for every single section, I use one of the patterns that I explain in the book as well, which is, okay, you as an agent now have to roast me with questions. So you're gonna ask me as many questions as you can to understand my point of view, my experience, and so on with a specific thing, right? So one of the things that I'm doing in order to answer those questions, usually Claude Code has this UI to ask you questions, and then it has a multi-select. I do that sometimes for relatively trivial things, but for more complex topics, let's say more open-ended questions, I prefer Claude, or like whatever coding agent you're using, to just ask me the questions in text, and then I'm gonna answer. And when I answer, depending on the type of question, I either use a vocal dictation or I just type it in. It depends a little bit on whether I have to think about the answer, or maybe it's something that I already know, and so I can just go faster by saying it. Once I do this, then it takes all this stuff into account. It takes all the markdown files, everything, and it drafts a first implementation of the single section of the chapter, right? At the same time, it creates ideas for images. So the way I structure it is I do have a placeholder, which is image idea. As we can see here, there are a bunch of them. And so I have this placeholder for image idea, and as we will see later, I do also have a script to ensure that everything that I do have all the images, that everything as a placeholder, just a little bit of ensuring that everything is in a good shape and I'm not missing bits and pieces here and there. So once I do have this first implementation, I review it manually, I check everything, I do my copy edits. Once I am relatively happy with the result, then I do an adversarial review, usually either with the same model or a different model. Recently I've done adversarial reviews with two models in parallel. I've compared the results, and eventually what happens is that I generate a feedback.md file. This feedback.md file just contains a set of things that the agent thinks that, I don't know, we might want to fix, we might want to change, all this good stuff. And so this is just a draft, right? What I do now is manually, I check every item and I say, okay, that's a good one, that's not great, I don't want to fix this is expected. And so eventually, item by item, I fix the real findings and discard the rest. Once I'm done with this, I apply one of the skills that I've written, which is where it is. There we go. Apply editor feedback. So the way I'm working with my editor, which is amazing by the way, is working through PRs on the GitHub repo. So we have a set of issues, PRs opened, and so all the communication happens on GitHub, not on Google Docs, not in every other platform. Everything is struck on GitHub, which is something that I love. And so what I've done, especially at the beginning, when I didn't know how to actually write in a proper way a book, is I've taken all the feedback that I was getting from my editor, and they built a skill which is called apply editor feedback. So this skill kind of mimics the rules that my editor suggested me to follow. It contains a whole bunch of rules, and so basically before my chapter goes to the editor, I ideally already fixed like 80% of the most common things, so that my editor doesn't have to go on the same issues over and over again. So what I've noticed is that the first couple of chapters have been like very a real pain because we had a lot of changes, but over time they just decreased, and there are just a few copy edits because, you know, thanks to the skill, um, now the agent is way better in writing with the correct style. I iterate on that, right? So I iterate for every section, and once a section is complete, then of course you have to review everything, right? Because it's not just, every section is not independent. Sometimes sections build on top of each other, sometimes sections are referring to other things. So I do a complete review of the chapter, and the review, I do different types of reviews. So I have multiple types of reviewers. I do have some LLM as judge. So for example, I do have a panel review scale which is using 3 personas. Is checking those 3 personas, everyone in its own subagent, which is looking for different things, and then I'm putting everything together and I'm finding what are the real high value findings. So this has been super useful until now. And then I'm checking for plagiarism, I'm checking for syntax. I do have here, as we will see in a minute, a few checks on GitHub. So for example, the plagiarism one, I'm checking that the links are reachable, so I don't have stale links. I'm checking for the chapter references. So for example, the chapters are not written like chapter 6 say this, but are written with the reference, right? So if I do ref, there we go. So in this case I have yeah, that's an example, right? But I do have reference, why specification matter, I do have a bunch of things. Of course, I do also have a skill to ensure that everything that I said in reference to another chapter is true, right? So for example, if in chapter 5 I tell you, hey, by the way, as we will see in chapter 6, that's how it works, this skill just ensures that in chapter 6 I'm really discussing this thing and it's not just a pointer, which is like a fake pointer or something. Then, once I'm done with this, usually I do have a lot of ideas, questions. I just update my notes file, or something that I'm doing more and more these days, I write it as an issue on the GitHub repo, so that my workflow just continues to flow, and then I'm gonna have another GitHub issue to tackle later. Then I just iterate on the chapter, I validate the consistency, reference links, and again, as much as I can, I'm trying to automate this with scripts. Of course, given that it's a book and it's not software, not everything can be validated by scripts, but you know, I'm doing my best. I'm just trying to do as much as I can with that. And to be honest, it already spotted quite a lot of things. So it's super useful. Also, from time to time, maybe a link breaks, maybe something changes, and so I can see that the reference broke because, I don't know, whatever. And so I just create an issue and I fix it. So it's a very good way to work so far, which of course it's not possible, I guess at least partially, if you're using Google Docs or something different. Now, when I do have an idea for improving, when I'm talking with people, every time I do have something and I say, and something clicks in my mind and I say, okay, this has to be in the book. I put it on GitHub on an issue. I research in the current content. I try to understand what I do already have as a pointer to that stuff. Then again, I do have my issue. The agent picks it up. So I let the agent do a first draft with my writing rules. So as we can see here in the Claude MD file, there should be somewhere. There we go, a writing style. So there is a full writing style which I'm following from the O'Reilly's best practices, right? So everything, every time I'm writing something, I'm writing it already with the tone of voice that I want. The agent itself is writing as I would write it. So that's why I'm comfortable in just starting from the GitHub issue in a new code session. I say, hey, let's tackle this. It's gonna create a draft PR for me, and then I do this. I do this over and over and over, which is I start to review it, I get new ideas, and so on. That's the first step. Once we have a PR, which can be from a chapter or which can be from an issue, what happens? At that point, we have a new PR on GitHub, right? My editor reviews, in this case, I've said the chapter, but the PR in general. The PR gets, oh, that's a problem. Anyway, so the PR gets reviewed and I get a bunch of suggestions, comments. What we do is what we would usually do as software engineers in a normal PR. So basically, I review the suggestions, we discuss on the PR to resolve comments. Some comments are very fun because we get to discuss like some small details, movie citations, cartoon citations, all this good stuff. It's very funny. Eventually, the PR gets merged and the chapters become ready for external reviewers because, of course, I am the owner. I am the writer of the content. Then we have my reviewer, my editor, which is amazing, and it's looking more at the style and the form of the content. But then we have to ensure that the content itself makes sense, right? So we have technical reviewers, and technical reviewers are basically some of the experts in the field, right, which work on this stuff every single day. And they review the content as well, and we do the same thing. They can open issues, they can open PRs, they can just send me the feedback over a PDF, whatever. And then eventually we have this very good feedback loop. Now, once everything is merged, I do a couple of things. So first of all, once the PR is merged, I create the images on Excalibur. So as we can see, all the images, I do have one image per chapter, sorry, one folder per chapter, and every single image is an Excalibur file. Every image itself then gets rendered as a PDF. There is a figure log here, which contains like all the figures. All the figures then, at some point, didn't happen yet because it's a bit too early, but all the images will then be sent to the production team, and the production team will redraw the images in the O'Reilly style. So I've done the draft, let's say, and they will build the final images. At the same time, what happens once we are happy enough with the chapter, ideally at some point I will publish an update on the early release. But what's happening right now is that the production team takes over a chapter and they do their own edits, they do their own magic under the hoods, and the chapter eventually gets published in early release. So if you right now go on the O'Reilly website and you search for AI native software engineering, you're gonna find the book, and you can actually read quite a lot of chapters at the moment because they have been published in early release. So we did all this workflow, everything, and we already have, I think, like 7 or 8 chapters, something around those lines, which are already published, which you can look at the moment, you can read. And I know that there are a lot of people already read them, and I've already got a lot of very, very useful feedback. So this is the high-level workflow that I'm using. As I was mentioning, I'm trying to treat this as a software project. So we have a cloud.md, it's not optimized, sorry about that. I will optimize it at some point. We have a bunch of scripts, we have a bunch of resources like the O'Reilly style guide, the writing style, the story style, because there is a chapter where I'm teaching this, where I'm telling a story. Everything about marketing, it's gonna be here in the book itself, because it allows me to just gather context from the chapters. And again, it's just about retrieval of the right context. So when I'm gonna start market the book, you will probably see some reference to the chapters and this good stuff. Then there are, you know, a few other folders, but that's the gist of it, right? And then I'm using, again, skills quite a bit. As you can see, I don't have too many skills. The number of skills is very small, but every single skill is doing its own optimized thing. And maybe over time, again, when I start to work on the distribution of the book, I'm gonna have more which are more, let's say, marketing or content oriented. So yeah, this is all. So far, my experience following this workflow is great. I'm gonna be honest, it's very good. The workflow changed a couple of times, of course, as I'm learning, because this is to me a very, very nice learning experience. One thing which I wasn't expecting is how much effort all this stuff is. Again, even though the writing part itself, I'm doing it with a lot of agents. So I'm using agents to actually write the book. It's still a lot of manual effort to just review everything, to write everything in a polished way, to ensure that the content makes sense, that the content is consistent across all the chapters. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that it is way harder than I thought initially, but it's again, it's a very, very nice learning experience for me as a first-time author. And yeah, this is my workflow. At some point, some of the skills, especially there is one which I love, which is the remove AI slop and write without AI slop, which I can't see at the moment. Maybe it's not on this branch anyway. So I've built a couple of optimized skills to remove the AI slop. So you know the triads is not X is Y. You know, there are a few patterns. So I've worked quite hard to build a system which is able to consistently remove them and rephrase in a way that makes more logical sense in plain English. So at some point I might open source some of this stuff. And yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. I would love to discuss a bit more about how I'm writing the book, what's under the hoods, because again, there is so much effort in building something valuable, especially these days. And in case you have any question, please reach out in the comments or on LinkedIn. I would love to have a chat. Thanks a lot, folks, and have a great day. Cheers.